All right. Oh, that does not look good. Let me try a different one. Let's see here. All right. Well, nonetheless, I'm going to jump in here. I am here live, as I put out earlier, that I am at the ATN conference, the Attachment Trauma Network, Creating Trauma Sensitive Schools conference. And let me tell you, I am super excited about being at this conference for so many reasons. And I'm going to have a few guests come in, and we're just going to chat about the experience. But let me tell you, it has been unbelievable what has been experiencing the last couple days of connections and working together and having conversations and enjoying ourselves to the point of our just joy, to be quite honest. And I'm sorry, I'm working on two cameras. Something's different with your camera. It's not actually connected to the, yeah, we'll figure that out. Anyways, so we're literally live and raw here. So we're just figuring it out. I'm actually working. Oh, there we go. I am working under two platforms right now. So if you were to go to the Attachment Trauma Network, which is right there, you will also be seeing the same exact feed. So I am Matthew Portell, obviously, if you're watching me from the Trauma Informed Educators Network. If you're watching from Attachment Trauma Network, I'm Matthew Portell, and I have taken over the podcast today to just have conversations with folks about this conference. This is the 6th year for this conference, my 2nd year of participating in the conference, and this was a really big opportunity for the Trauma Informed Educators Network, because this is the first conference we've ever partnered and sponsored as a network, as well as set a booth up. And so you can see the shirt that I'm wearing. It is so exciting that we have sold tons of unapologetic disruptor shirts as we have united here in Houston around this work and been able to hear some remarkable presentations. Dr. Lori Desautel, who was on the Trauma Informed Educators Network podcast last week, was one of our keynotes and just blew us away with the information that she shared, her ideas, all of that. Just resonated through the room and built these connections that were so powerful. And not to mention the laughing. And last night we had a speaker social where we got to just hang out, talk, chat with each other, learn from each other. It was absolutely amazing what we were able to do. If you're at the conference and you're watching this, I want you to come up to the podcast booth so you can come and we can have a conversation around what the conference has been like. I've learned that when #disruptors unite, which is the case in this, amazing things happen. Ideas begin to manifest. I think during these times is when we really start getting that innovation ideas of connecting to people in the work, connecting to experts in the field, connecting to colleagues that we have worked with for a long time. I actually was extremely excited to be able to spend some time with the Chester County Intermediate Unit School District that I've been working with all year, seeing them outside of that school setting and really just hanging out and having conversations with them about the work and the amazing work they're doing and how we've been working together. So there's so much that's been happening from the bingo night last night, which I was not there because I was at the speaker social, but I did see there was a special T-Rex that showed up. I mean, there's just so much happening here at the conference that I could not encourage anyone enough. People say I don't have the time to get away from what I'm doing. If I'm a principal, if I'm a teacher, I will tell you all the amount of reward you get from coming to a conference like Creating Trauma Sensitive Schools with Attachment Trauma Network there's no amount of time or money that isn't worth it, because I'm leaving today. If you can't tell, we're at the end here. We're close to the end of the conference, and the fire that continues to be lit and driven by the conversations that we have and the connections that we built is what keeps this movement going. And so you missed this year if you're not here, but there's always going to be next year. And from what I hear, it's going to be in a different location. But I hope that you all can be able to make that time. So I'm actually going to bring in one of the presenters really quick. And she's also a participant. She's been a great friend of mine. She's been at the Trauma Informed Educators Network conference. If you attended that conference as well, our conference, but she's bringing a skill set that's remarkable in so many ways. And I just want to invite her to come here and have a conversation. We're going to have to sit close. I hope you don't mind, Meg. So Meg is here. Meg, introduce yourself. You got two different places to look, but we can do this.
Yeah, this is interesting. So I'm Meg Baldwin. I am I work for an urban public school by day. That's my day gig. I'm a behavior interventionist at a urban elementary school, but then I'm also a sanctioned and practitioner trainer for Balavizex. So we did some rhythm and we did some movement. We had a great group of folks this morning coming in just to see the demo, and they always just ask really good questions.
That's power.
They ask such good questions, and they're at this point in the conference, they're tired, but they're still really full of energy. So much energy.
It's a different kind of tired.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to lie, you all. I stayed out till 11 o'clock last night, which is like 3 hours past my bedtime. So there's that tired.
Right.
Then there's this knowledge tired where you're getting so much amazing information that you're processing, you're connecting, you're having conversations. That's a different level tired.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the fire to match the tired, right? So there's this energy that happens and still happening, even when people are exhausted because they're going to sessions up until the end of the day, like yours, just recently.
Yep.
Asking questions, connecting to each other, networking. It's totally worth. So tell us a little bit more about your session. What was it like? What did you talk about? What were some of the questions? I would love to know.
Okay, so the first session I did was on building relational regulation spaces. And I think sometimes regulation spaces get a bad rap because they're not meant to be relational. And so that's what we really try to do at our school is we follow Bruce Perry's sequence of engagement of regulate, relate, reason. And it was interesting because I told the story of a student who always chooses a relational activity for regulation. And so that was and there were a lot of really good questions around that. Like, how do you make that happen? What are the nuts and bolts? What are the actual strategies you are using? What are the actual tools you're using? Like, what's in the cabinet of fun? And that's what teachers needed. And so my final question was, what's one thing that you're taking with you and what's one thing that you're leaving behind? And the most common answer the thing taking with them was like the actual, what do I do next? Like I can implement and I can use these things when I go back to school tomorrow.
And, I think that is one of the powers of this conference and many other conferences is, the why. Mm-hmm. And I think the power is you now are learning the how. So what does it look like, right? And I also can say there is no perfect playbook, right? So it's not like just do step 1 through 62.
No.
And by the end of the year, children are going to be sitting, smiling at you, doing everything. It doesn't work like that.
That's not how humans work.
It's exactly right. And what you're supporting people in is just another tool to put in that toolbox to be able to say, hey, I see you, I feel you, I'm here to support you, and looking at what is happening in a way that's productive using the Bruce Perry regulate, relate, reason.
Exactly.
So tell us specifically maybe some of the strategies you shared in your session. I know it takes a lot of things, but talk about some of the strategies because I think that is something that they want to know more of, that could possibly just happen like they could do it tomorrow.
Yeah, so I like to think about regulation strategies in kind of like categories. So when we offer students regulation opportunities, we always offer a gross motor opportunity, a fine motor opportunity, and a relational opportunity. And then some of them, by the time that they're done seeing us, they're ready to move into that reason part. So that comes into what do our emotions look like? What are those sensations in our body? But we've worked through the sequence of engagement to be able to get the kids there. So I like to think of them in categories of fine motor, large motor, and then relational. And the kids, they choose relational every single time.
Yeah.
Every single time.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I think kids, sometimes we don't give them credit for knowing what they need. It's like we as adults have to tell them what they need. And there's times in which once you start teaching strategies and skills, kids can self-advocate. Kids can tell you what they need in those moments. And I think that's really important in this work, that it isn't just about what adults know, it's also about what options kids have and how do they utilize the things that are being taught to be successful in whatever space and place that they're in. So if you don't know Meg's work, and I'm going to say it. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go.
Ball,
No.
bow,
Mm-hmm.
balance.
Yes.
Bow of physics.
Yeah.
It's closer.
You're closer.
Okay, say it right then.
Okay. Bow Viz X. Acronym. You're super close. Acronym for Balance Auditory Vision Exercises.
You all, I've been in education for 15 years and I still can't get like acronyms and things. I don't know why, but I'm gonna try it again. Bow Viz X.
Correct.
You saw it first. I actually said it correctly, and I've been working on this for a while. So reach out to Meg if you want to know more about what she's doing and more about the use of these regulation strategies, thinking in the idea of regulate, relate, reason. Movement, you all, is such a powerful tool too that so many kids can use to regulate. You know, we tell kids all the time, just sit still. Just sit still. If you were to see me right now, my legs are shaking because I don't sit still. I also will show you another awesome tool that I just bought. I'm not paid by these folks. I just met them, and she is the founder of this place, is remarkable. But this is one of the many tools that are used by one amazingly talented person who created Capeable here. See, Capeable. This is a regulation tool that can be used. It has magnets in it, and it's extremely soft. So it clicks together, and I can tell you these are extremely well made, and you can pop them together, pull them apart, right? I've been stacking them back and forth. It's got the texture to kind of help have you tried it? It's so good.
Yeah.
A matter of fact, I actually left it in the hallway just about 15 minutes ago, and somebody brought it back to me, thank goodness. But I thought, even as a principal in an IEP meeting, I used to use fidgets anyway. This is one of the things I would have used that is so calming. So this is just an example of one of the vendors that was here and something I had never seen before that I'm loving already. So Meg, anything else? Anything else you want to leave them?
Do you want to tell them how to get a hold of me?
Yeah. To get a hold of Meg, call 1-800-MEG-BALD. I'm just kidding. That is not it. How do they get a hold of you?
You can find me on my website, which is www.heartlandbavx.com is the best way to get a hold of me. Or you can find me on social media, and I don't know. You'll have to search it. I don't know what the hashtag or what the thing is.
We're tired.
We are.
We're tired.
We're having trouble making sentences.
Yeah. Andrea, I love that you're tuning in and you said you're stringing beads while watching. You know what? I get it, and I appreciate that. And you're a somatic teacher working with youth. Awesome. Can you type it in the chat? Yes, we will put it in the comments on what your website is. If you could type it right in there, it will go out to all the platforms on the network. We will also type it. In with ATN, if you don't mind. It's heartlandbavx.com. There it is.
There it is.
If you're watching on ATN, it's about to come to you also. Thanks.
High five.
Thanks
See
for
you
being
later.
awesome.
Yep.
Appreciate you. All right, so we have somebody else that's going to come and chat. She didn't know she's ready, but she's going to be ready. So I have invited just people to come and talk. Literally, my agenda is I do not have an agenda. And the agenda is I just want to talk to people from the conference. So come on over. Come on over. We are going to chat. Again, we are in Houston at the ATN conference. It's really confusing. This is not like a typical one. There's two different cameras, so you can only look at one.
That's fine.
All right. So introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Dr. Deshauna Reed, and I am an educational researcher. And I also am an instructional coach and special education advocate. I own D. Reed Coaching, Consulting, and Advocacy, LLC, here in Houston. I am a longtime veteran of education. And a lot of what I do is, of course, centralized on social and emotional learning competencies, but I'm looking for streamlining the process to make the job of educators and leaders that much easier and make the learning experience that much more relevant and resonant for students by aligning it directly with academic content, regardless of the grade level. I do primarily specialize in secondary education and special education, and I think that about covers it.
You know, I said we had no agenda, but she just knocked it out. Like you said so much that was that I want to dig into a little bit more.
Sure.
You said you're trying to create an alignment, right, to
Right.
help schools do this work. And she said something that I love to hear in this work. She is trained in exceptional education and high school.
Yes.
Because if I get more requests from high school saying, I get it, I know what it looks like in elementary school.
Sure.
What does this work look like in high schools?
Right.
And I have to turn to colleagues. I did work in middle and high schools as an instructional coach for 2 years, but by no means am I an expert at all in that space and place. So tell us, your experience, and you have a vast amount of experience. Tell us what some of this looks like in a high school, right? Because it's not like you're going to do feelings charts necessarily with the little smiley faces, although
Right.
you can.
Right. Sure.
But what does it look like? What does it look like?
What it looks like is taking the practical skills that students actually need to be able to be successful when they're no longer in school. We do a great job across the nation of providing academic content instruction. We've got some phenomenal teachers that are just killing it every day in the classroom, delivering the academic content. But part of what makes them so successful is the relationship they have, not with their content, but with the students sitting in the seat. And those people understand I'm teaching a person, not developing a product. And those are two completely different things. So what it looks like in high school really has to do with what's really going on with them in adolescence as they are moving into young adulthood. What does it look like to have a healthy relationship? What does it look like to disagree respectfully? What does it look like for me to be able to have my point of view and you have your point of view, and I'm not trying to change yours and you're not trying to change mine, and we can coexist, and not in the cliche manner of coexistence, but the real relevant coexistence. And additionally, when you directly align social emotional learning competencies with the academic content that you are teaching, it is not just relevant, but it will resonate and it will replicate. And those things are extremely important to the work that I do. So when I work in middle and high school, and I worked as a campus administrator for a kindergarten through 8th grade charter school campus, my primary areas of focus were 6th through 8th grade. Because that's where the biggest challenges were happening, right? We are full on in the throes of adolescence and in puberty. And we're also, especially in the community in which I served, where I was at a campus where 75% of the students were non-native English speakers and probably were the only English speaker in their household. They were coming from families that were working overnight shifts. So they were the person responsible for taking care of their younger siblings. They were also the people that were trying to navigate relationships in terms of romantic relationships and their relationships with others, and even just trying to figure out who they were in the grand scheme of everything that was going on in their community. And on top of that, navigating the fact that they were in a highly impoverished area at the same time. And so wanting to be able to do some of the things that they're seeing on TV or hearing about from other kids in other areas that are more affluent, and not being able to access that made it very difficult for them to really be able to navigate those pieces of content that were being presented specifically in English language arts and reading. And so in a high school setting, it really looks like embedding these strategies, such as the expressive interactive journaling technique that I had created. I did that with 7th graders. It was something that was very straightforward, very targeted, very basic, but it helped them connect the dots between my self-awareness, my social awareness, my ability to self-regulate, my ability to make responsible decisions, my ability to form relationships with people, and with the content that's being delivered. It created an access point for them because it was rooted in them.
I mean, you said a ton there, but I think what I heard at the very beginning, and I think it's really important, you humanized kids.
Yes.
Right. And I think 2001, whatever it was, when standardized assessments began, we changed the game, not even knowing we were changing the game. I have my background is in anthropology and looking at the impacts of cultures, right? Shifts that are made. We had a major shift. Do I believe in accountability? Absolutely.
Sure.
We absolutely need accountability. But for some reason, there was this shift that happened where the focus became on the academic outcome. And now we are 20 over whatever years in, and I think we're seeing some impact of that, right? When we have dehumanized kids because we're trying to get them to focus, to learn, without focusing on them as being human beings and maybe some basic needs not being met, whether that's psychological needs, whether that's physical needs, whether that's emotional needs.
Sure.
And what I heard you say is the game changer is to humanize kids.
Yes.
Another piece, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, and I'm going to talk about it again on my other podcast that I do with Paces Connection, which is history, culture, trauma. We talk in the podcast with Melissa Merrick, which is the CEO of Prevent Child Abuse America, how there is a culture of accepted child abuse. Now, pause for a second, but I'm going to go a little further. The mistreatment of kids has been tolerated.
Yep.
Right. And in schools, we have to pause a minute and say, what does that mean? When you said that kids are communicating with adults in a level playing field, being able to be heard, right? Yeah. As well as listen. Yeah. That means the power differential has to shift a little bit.
Absolutely.
I understand authority. There is a space for authority, and I get that. There has to be a guide in this space. But when we talk about voice and being heard, there needs to be a level playing field of adults being able to be in a space to accept it and listen. As a principal, it was so hard for me.
Sure. Yeah.
With parents, with kids, with my own 12-year-old, right. I have to be cognizant to pause, stop, listen, and sometimes validate. Because sometimes we're in the wrong.
Sure.
So talk a little more about that, because I think that is a strategy that is missed, and that's building space for kids to be seen, heard, validated, and respected.
Sure.
Because I think we have this misguided idea that kids just should respect everybody because they're supposed to respect everybody.
Right.
I think there should be respect, but that also has to be returned. We have to respect the kids because they're human.
Sure.
So talk a little bit about that.
And, I love that you brought into the room the authority piece. Yeah. Because you're absolutely right with the misalignment and what that actually looks like, sounds like, feels like. We came from a generation of do as I say, not as I do.
Absolutely.
This generation is not tolerating that whatsoever.
No.
They, however, are on the mindset, I saw what you did, so now I don't believe what you said.
That's so true.
And so what it is that we are demonstrating is that much more important because they live in a society that is completely inundated with what everybody else is doing at a moment's notice. We've got Snapchat. We've got really great apps that also can be really productive. I know I may be putting this out here and I'm not doing a shameless plug for any social media platform because I've actually backed myself off several of them. But Be Real, I think, is a great one if used appropriately.
That's exactly right.
Right. But then you also have the benefits and drawbacks of Instagram when it comes to children and youth,
absolutely,
especially in the middle and high school spaces, because they're wanting to emulate somebody's snapshot without realizing there's a panoramic view that you missed. And so those pieces are important. And I think that part of the challenge that we have in terms of that balance between adults and students and how they can actually meet each other on a level playing field really has to do with our own personal biases.
Absolutely.
That's what it all comes down to. And when I present to campus leaders or independent educators or even fellow consultants, when we talk about, the different things that we're seeing, especially before audiences, I explain to them there are 3 ages in any classroom, right? And they kind of look at me a little sideways. I'm like, stay with me. There are 3 ages. There's the actual chronological age of the educator in the classroom. There's their teaching age, how long they've actually been in education. And those 2 numbers don't match unless they started teaching from the womb, right? So there's that age. And then there's the age of the student. And that student is coming in only with the chronological years that they have. Now, sometimes their experience far exceeds that actual age. Because I have dealt with some kids that have had more life than I could even have possibly imagined. And served those kids, and I believe served them well. But nonetheless, those 3 ages are at play. And the big bias really comes in where we as adults in the room assume that because we've got the chronological age and we've got the experience that those students have, that we are somehow owed something in return. They don't owe us a thing.
No.
And so that's not to say that the teacher in the room doesn't deserve to be respected, because
Sure.
that's really what it all boils down to.
Mhm.
People want to feel safe. They want to feel like they belong. They want to be seen, heard, and understood.
Mhm.
Those are the top 5 things.
Mhm.
And when we hit those things, we can bring down those walls, those biases that we have
Mhm.
against the way that we're approaching our students.
Mhm.
And really, it actually goes even deeper than that. We have to realize that the bias is there.
Mhm.
And we have to be willing to unpack our own suitcases
Absolutely.
before we start telling students what they should even have in theirs. And
Absolutely.
that's an important concept.
Let me tell you, you need to come on the podcast full time. This is just the takeover for ATN, but I'm gonna have you back on because I want to dig so deep into what you just said.
Oh, okay.
Because
All right.
I had a previous guest on here, Dr. Tracy Benson, who wrote Unconscious Bias in Schools,
Yes.
and he talks about intent and outcome.
Yes.
A lot of times those biases, right? We all have them. They exist in amongst all of us.
Absolutely.
It's just whether we're willing to pause and feel it and
We gotta own
understand, like, where did that come from? Why did that thought come into my mind?
True.
And he says that even if the intent isn't there,
Right.
but the outcome is driven by it, it's the impact, right?
Listen.
And he went deep into that, and I had to check myself a lot. I don't know if you know, but I am a white male with a beard, and I drive a pickup truck.
I just found out today.
Yeah,
actually.
I hate to break it to you, but that's who I am. And
Okay.
I was in a school of predominantly Black and brown kids,
Right.
and that required me to do a lot of work.
Sure.
I had to check myself often of, am I doing this because I want them to conform to a system that wasn't built for them, right? And there were times of like, I got to get them to do this because it's going to keep them safe,
Sure.
right? But safe from what? And I started having to think to myself, I'm getting them ready for a predominantly white experience, right?
Sure.
And that took a long time for me to get to those points, but that's what we talk about when we're talking about all of these different, it could be a bias based off of their socioeconomics.
Sure.
I had Zaretta Hammond was on this podcast, and she was talking about this how we use what did she say? It was a pedagogy of compliance.
Yes. Yes.
And we dug into some of these things. So we're gonna put a pin in this one, and I'm gonna have you back
Perfect.
on the
I would love
podcast.
that.
So
I would
I think
love that.
we've gotten some love over here on the Trauma Informed Educators Network. So and Karen, so we're
Wonderful.
gonna do this. But what about this conference? Is this your first year? Have you been to ATN conference before? Have you
Gosh.
tell me more? Tell me about your experience, because I just shared with them, like, I mean, I feel like I've been to like Trauma Informed Church at this point, because I've met so many people. I feel so filled. I have a new toy that I get to regulate with.
Look at you do it. I love it.
So tell me, what's your experience been like?
My experience, first of all, this is my first ATN conference.
Whoop, whoop.
And I have loved every second of it. I presented in a lot of places, in a lot of states, and I have been speaking for a lot of years. But this conference by far is the best conference that I have ever had the honor of attending. It just happens to be in my back door, right? But it has been an incredible experience. I have met the most deeply passionate, loving, focused on solutions that are right by kids and are best for adults that I more than I ever could have even imagined. I've shared space with people like you and others that are just complete change agents and unapologetic disruptors. I'm telling you, I need that shirt. I need the shirt. My favorite color is yellow.
Oh,
let me know.
Okay.
Not purple though, because that'll look like a grape. But
she told me earlier. But what about, my thought is black with yellow text.
I'm with it.
Okay,
I'm with it.
that is in production.
Right
Jack,
now.
my T-shirt. If you're listening, we're gonna put that in production.
I also like blue, whatever. But this has been a beautiful, beautiful experience. At first, I have to tell you, I was a little nervous, and not nervous about speaking, because that part doesn't really unnerve me. But I was presenting at the same time as the keynote speaker. Now, I don't know if any of y'all know what that is like.
Yeah.
That kind of experience. Because it was about to be me and the Hilton staff in that room. I know. Which was fine. They're very, very nice. And I really, really appreciate the AV folks.
Right.
I really appreciate everyone that has worked on this. but I was really afraid that I wasn't going to have much of
Yeah.
a presence. And I looked in, and at first there were 2 or 3. I was like, okay, you know what? It's a small
I talked to
group.
somebody.
It's a small group.
Right.
Okay, this is going to be fine. I like small groups. This is fine. And then I stepped outside and I stood by my sign and I was just saying hello. Threshold, common technique that I've been using for decades, right? And then all at once I come in and my moderator, Sarita, she was fabulous. She says, okay, are you ready? And I was like, who are these people? Where these people come from? She was like, they came in, they saw you, they wanted to come in. I said, oh my gracious, I didn't realize that all at once there were 30 plus people in that room.
That's awesome.
And we had the best time. We had such meaningful conversation. It was beautiful to get to share my work and to share what's coming next for me. The journal that I actually have put together that aligns with my work, Right to Thrive, and it has to do with improving and increasing word fluency in 7th grade students. And so it's something that's perfectly aligned with English language arts, reading and writing for secondary.
Awesome.
Which is also a space that is missing a lot of that alignment, a lot of those direct ties. And so we talked about that. We talked about my upcoming book, The UDL for SEL, which actually embeds the neural networks that are at play with universal design for learning and how the core competencies just fit seamlessly into it so that teachers can literally plug and play regardless of what their content was. We got to share space. We laughed. We had some tears because we talked about the impact of trauma and what that type of barrier does for kids. And in addition to that, what that also does for the adult in the room, because we are absolutely whole human beings that are we're bringing in our own luggage. And if we're not going to unpack our suitcase, we're not in a position to tell kids what they should even have in theirs, you know?
Did you guys, so I got to pause. Did you hear that? Did you all hear that? And I'm not going to say it the same because I could never say it how she just said it. But what she said was, until we're unwilling ourselves to do work, we can't expect the work to be done by the kids. I believe in that so deeply that is the next shift that we have to focus on is we all have our stuff and we can't pretend this idea of fake it till you make it.
There is none.
It does not exist.
Face it until you make it. You have to face it.
Yes.
And that is so difficult for educators and for leaders because we're in a position where we go live from the time we walk onto the campus to the time that we leave. So there's not a lot of that prep time. Yeah, we do instructional planning and that's fine. But what about people prep? Because you have to prep yourself before you can even access the content that you're going to be delivering to students. And it's not just about what's the pedagogy, what's even the culturally responsive pedagogy. And I'm not knocking either of those things, but who are you as a person? What is it that is limiting you from even accessing your content? What is it that's limiting you from accessing your team? Do you feel safe? Do you feel like you can trust them? Do you feel like they are actually for you? Because while it takes one trusted adult for a student, it also takes that very same thing for the adults in the room. That's a fact.
And that's a shout out to the administrators, you all, because I'm telling you, what we want to see the teachers do with and next to the kids is what we have to do next and with the educators. It's not any different. We have to have teachers have to be seen, heard, validated, because we know on a national and, to be quite honest, even an international scale, the educators aren't feeling seen, heard, and validated. Matter of fact, they're feeling unheard, quieted, and attacked. And so as a school administrator, we have to make it our priority to see, validate, and learn from our staff, you all. I don't know if you've done it, but we surveyed our staff 3 times a year. We wanted to know what we were doing well. We wanted to know what we can make difference. And then as a leadership team, not just the admin, we made strategies based off what the staff was telling us they need. Just like in the classroom, you would make the adjustments for your students. You have to make the adjustments for the staff. So, well, thank you for your time. If people want to learn more about you, where can they learn more? Do you have social media? I know you said you're taking a step back, but do you have a website? How can they find you?
I do. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter, and it's at DReedCCA. I also have a website, and it's www.dreedcca.com. I do a variety of professional developments, workshops. I also do contractual agreements with school districts in state and out of state. There's a variety of different offerings on my website. You can check that out and be on the lookout for my book coming out at the end of March. It is called The UDL for SEL. And so I'm really excited about this, my very first book that took me all of 4 months to type it, but about a decade to write. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm impressed that it took you only 4 months to write it. And I respect the decade to get there, because I am in that same space, except it's taken me a decade to write it.
It's totally, listen, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
Zero judgment. Judgment does not live here.
Right. Look, you just got to be curious, right? Not
That's
judgmental. But I honestly say that because this has been my avenue right here, speaking to all of the listeners on the podcast, which now I checked last week, it was about 12,000 last month.
Oh, wow.
We are about to hit 170,000 streams in 55 countries.
Wow.
So you all, I appreciate that you're willing to listen to this avenue as well. You're coming back on.
Absolutely.
We're going to connect and we're going to dig deep into some of the things that you said. Can you type your email address in there? And then I don't know if she got it over there for ATN, but if you type it in,
absolutely,
we'll get that. You all, thank you so much for tuning in. As I said, this was a spontaneous, is that it?
That's my website.
Yeah, we're going to hit that and it's going to go out to all the platforms that this is streamed on.
Beautiful.
So you can find, tell me.
It's Deshauna.
Deshauna.
Yes.
You can find Deshauna on her website. Reach out to her. She obviously is bringing a ton of wealth of knowledge. And if you need her support, reach out. We just met yesterday or today.
Yeah, yesterday.
I was like, hey, come talk to me at the podcast. So we don't have any association other than she's here, I'm here, we're here together. So
and you're great, and I appreciate this. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to do it, to be able to share space with you. I'm just excited. I'm looking forward to talking with you again.
Well, I appreciate it. So you all, thanks for listening. I am going to be off next week. We're not going to do the Thursday night podcast, but I will be there the following week. I wish I could tell you who was coming on, but I'm tired. I've stayed up late. I've gotten up early. I'm tired, but keep a lookout. I know for sure I'm not on Thursday. You know what? It may be Logan. Logan might be coming on. He is a middle school inspiration who talks to kids all over the country, and Why Be Normal is who he represents. So you will not want to miss Logan and his message, because it's fire and it is inspirational. So thank you all very much. I did not do this at the beginning because I was so anxious to get on that I forgot, but I am going to take us out in something I know you probably recognize, as you get to hear it. As always, thank you for it's been a blast. And as always, world something absolutely awesome. Yeah.